You encouraged me to speak from my heart about what I believe is true at this time, and I do believe there is a truth. So that's what I'm going to do. I also believe there are many lies out there that are threatening the safety and peace of the world that we're living in. And one way to counter lies is to speak truth. I am from Norway, and this obviously shapes my worldview. This summer, I got up in front of a group of young people from the Balkans, and I talked about the benefits of paying taxes for the common good. And this is a very strange concept in this part of the world. But I believe in the common good. I believe that what benefits the society as a whole will also benefit me. And all my life, I held this assumption and I took it for granted, and I thought it was shared by everyone. But living in a different culture, in a different country, has taught me that this is not the case. So it is my belief in the common good that, for example, compels me to wait in line rather than push past others to try and get to the cashier first. It's this belief in the common good that tells me to follow the rules in traffic, to make way so that others can pass, to not throw litter on the sidewalk because it's going to be unpleasant for the next person walking by. And this also reminds me, by the way, if you've ever walked into a public bathroom in this part of the world, you will get an encounter very quickly with what most people think about the common good here. But similarly, getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and following some basic rules and protective measures are, to me, just other acts for the common good. And so I'm going to illustrate why I believe this with a little comparison, because there are two countries that I'm most familiar with, and that's Norway and Romania, because I live in Romania now, and I'm from Norway. So when I checked the numbers this morning, Norway is close to reaching 80% vaccination of its entire population. And after a brief peak this summer, the infection rates are on their way down. The country reopened fully last Saturday. Most of those who lost their jobs are back at work, and those who didn't lose their jobs are better off financially than ever before. The economy is more active than it was pre-pandemic. Schools are open, people are back to their usual routine. And in Norway, most people, I would argue, believe in the common good. And most people took precautions, respected the protective measures, and they got vaccinated when they had the chance. And the numbers of hospitalizations and deaths in Norway have been low throughout the pandemic. And now, finally, Norway is approaching some kind of post-pandemic new normal, which is what we all want, right? And in contrast to this, Romania has been providing free public access to vaccinations since March this year, but it has only managed to vaccinate 26% of its population from the numbers I saw this morning. And it looked good for a while over the summer. The country had very low infection rates, but almost immediately after the summer holiday ended, the numbers skyrocketed again. And the infection rate in Romania has never been so high. More than 100 people are dying from COVID-19 every single day in this country. We're approaching another lockdown. Businesses will suffer. Schools might close down again. Romania is further away from reaching a post-pandemic new normal than ever before. So the main difference that I see here between Norway and Romania in this scenario is the most obvious, the vaccination rates. And the cause for this difference is the number of people who have bought into anti-vaccine narratives and conspiracy theories about the virus itself. And it can also be seen as a reflection of the general people's trust in authorities and experts and political leaders, which in Norway is very high, in Romania it's very low. There are good reasons for why many people in this country have a large dose of skepticism towards authorities. There's been poor and corrupt leadership, lies, miscommunication, things that Romanians have grown accustomed to through years of communism and after, and in some cases, not trusting authorities has been the right approach. But right now, the consequences are fatal. I want to talk about how my experience was, because when I got the vaccine, I was overjoyed. I thought this is going to be our lifeboat, our ticket through and out of the pandemic. When everyone would get their vaccines, we wouldn't be at risk to each other anymore. No more quarantines, no more lockdowns, no more masks. And as soon as I had the chance, I went to get my vaccine. My husband and I danced in our living room. We celebrated that day. We thought it was the beginning of the end. And a few months later, we realized not everyone wanted the vaccine. In fact, a lot of people were very loudly and proudly against the vaccine. And shockingly, it was more often than not fellow believers, followers of Jesus. And I was surprised at first. And then I was disappointed, then frustrated and enraged, and then sad and depressed. I would have thought it was obvious for any Christian. Getting the vaccine is the most practical way to love your neighbor in a pandemic. It's the only way to get us safely out of the pandemic. And to be honest, I struggle, because no matter how carefully I try to put my words together, they will come out in a condescending us versus them language. And if it's one thing we don't need, it's more of that. We who are in favor of the vaccine and other protective measures, we claim to be on the side of science. But those who are against the vaccine and against protective measures also claim to be on the side of science. So those who are against it will claim that they will accuse me of being naive because I listen to public health authorities and experts as they are portrayed in the mass media. And I would accuse them of being paranoid for believing that all of this is just one big thought to take away their freedoms. And the more we argue, the more deeply entrenched we get into our own ideas and opinions as we hold on to dear life, to the worldview that we have adopted and integrated into our identity. And I don't really think these types of arguments, honest and well-intentioned as they may be, are getting us anywhere. So in the middle of all this division and hopelessness, I still believe that we as followers of Jesus have a responsibility and the opportunity to be salt and light in the world. And in Jesus, who is the heart of the Christian faith, we have a perfect example to follow, which surpasses our differences. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's the greatest commandment, second only to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And Jesus also said, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. How far are we from that today, I wonder? So how do we practice loving our neighbors in this pandemic? So first, as I mentioned, I believe getting vaccinated and using safety measures to avoid spreading the virus is the most practical way to show love to our neighbors. While I am young and healthy and would most likely be perfectly okay, even if I got the virus, we don't know. I might unknowingly pass it on to someone else, someone older, someone less healthy than me. And so for me, the vaccine and the protective measures are more about protecting the other, and in this way, loving the other. And the second thing is that I'm asking, how do I love my neighbor even when I'm convinced that they're acting selfishly and irresponsibly and they're willingly making themselves a threat to the public health, making my own and everyone else's lives miserable for the unforeseeable future? How do I love that photographer that Livia was mentioning at the beginning? I don't have the answer to this, but I expect we would start by remembering that I am loved even when I am irrational, irresponsible, and selfish. And I love them, I choose to love them by trying to put myself in their shoes and doing my very best to understand, respect their concerns, because many have very valid concerns on all sides of this. Empathize with what people are going through, even if I completely disagree with their opinions and their actions. And if they need me, I will still be there for them in whatever way I can. even if that's physically very far away. And that's, I think, if all of us would try and adopt a sacrificial attitude like this and thinking of our neighbors' needs first and our own second, would we still be having these discussions? Would there still be a pandemic left to speak of?